Well, hi there. Welcome to the Lonesome Road, America's most first and foremost Dan Aykroyd related podcast. No, that's not true. But we were just discussing backstage some disturbing aspects of Ghostbusters, which perhaps we'll get to a little bit later in the show. But at first, we have to talk about the very real situation of ghosts among us, and also sometimes how that makes good country music subjects. But ghosts is a pretty broad topic, and I don't know. We were bandying back and forth, and we were googling. I found out that if you Google news ghosts, it's usually very figurative, usually depressing figurative news, and we wanted the real ghost news, which Zach, who joins
Yeah.
me along with Seth and his technical difficulties, myriad technical difficulties. Zach was googling for the real ghost news, but I don't know if he found it. What have you learned so far today about ghosts? Do you feel like we're getting
Uh,
somewhere on this topic?
I don't know. The only thing I've learned is that Rob Lowe now talks to ghosts. That's
Right.
probably the most serious piece of. That's the only real piece of ghost news. That everything else is, depressing war news or something. But uh,
Yeah. It
but
seems
yeah.
like a
So
slow ghost news time. I mean, if you, I recently put a Google alert for UFO and I'm Bigfoot and Mothman stuff just so I could see like what kind of weird sightings were popping up. Um, but ghosts, I don't know. Maybe they're just harder to find amongst all the other stuff. Uh, I guess the easy question is, do you guys believe in ghosts? Because I don't know that I do, which is not very interesting, I
Kind of.
realize. Kind of.
Yes and no, kind of. Like, kind of, yeah. I mean,
Kind of is kind of the
I'll
theme of
probably
this
tell
show.
later.
So,
Yeah, it was like I grew up, I spent my first couple of years in a haunted house. I was a
really?
baby, so I don't remember any of it. Yeah. I saw a ghost, or I had this ghost experience that lasted a period of like over a year. Haunting is still continuing to this day. But uh,
Well, that's pretty substantial, except
yeah.
I guess if you don't remember it. I know someone.
my house, but the other haunting, I was like 20 when it happens. It was pretty clear.
Oh, really? Are you going to share with the class, or is that
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, I can. So I worked at like a family owned hardware store in my hometown. Uh, when I was like 20, and there was this one back door. The store's lumber yard was behind, was like on the main street, and there's this back door aisle the we used to get out in the lumber yard easily. Like we had to go help customers or something out there. And the store really prided itself on having like just like really great service. So like if you saw somebody waiting or somebody not with an employee, you would go over there and offer to help them, you know, right right away. It was or like it was just the sort of the biggest imperative is like just customer service. We would walk past. You'd be walking furiously or trying to get through this room, but you would always out of the corner of your eye in this back door down the end of this aisle, you would see this old man standing out in the lumber yard. He looked just like angry, just beyond mad, just so pissed. And he was wearing like a blue chambray work shirt, kind of those kind of big wide leg they wore in the 30s, and like a jean jacket, road hat, like that style of hat, which is kind of unusual because not a whole lot of people wore those in the early 2000s. Um, so it's kind of unusual, but it's like, oh man, that old man is pissed. I better get out there and help him. And so you go out there, and then he wouldn't be there. And so I just kept it to myself because it was always you're outside a lot of the day, and you didn't get it. You're outside a lot of the day, and you were like usually wearing long sleeves because you're working around like saws and stuff and power tools, and it would regularly be over 100 degrees outside. So you think like, man, it's gonna be just it's the heat getting to me. Just always, I would never talk about
that's
it.
what Agent Scully would probably assume. I mean, or any other fictional or non-fictional skeptic.
It's just a
say.
figment of my imagination. It's just a figment of my imagination or whatever. So after working maybe like a year or two, we're at this party and somebody said something like, I think the store is haunted. I'm like, yeah, it probably is. Like I always think I see an old man out in the lumberyard. Look at each other like, you see him too? And then we so like, but then we all start talking about where is he? We all saw him in the same place, and we always saw him wearing the same thing. That's weird. And the owners had never heard this. And this is a store that'd been in the family for 3 generations. They were the 3rd generation to own it. And so like, well, that's weird. So we'll go talk to our parents about it and ask them questions if they know anything about this. Their parents said, well, that sounds a lot like the man that our parents bought the store from. And shortly after he sold it, it was like late at night or something, someone beat him to death on the property.
Oh, shit.
And so he's just like standing out there.
Bummer story with the ghost stories.
And so he's just standing out there pissed off. So now we all know the store is haunted. So when like things in the lumberyard would move and nobody moved them, or you would hear you're out in the lumberyard by yourself, like on the catwalks and stuff where there was no one there, but you could hear somebody walking, and you'd see the old guy out in the yard, and you'd just be like, yeah, it's just a ghost, whatever. Ago, and I worked there when I was 20. That's a lot longer ago than I care to tell you. But I went back there a couple of years ago, and they said, hey, Seth, what's the unusual thing about this store? And immediately, the person that manages it and one of the new cashier had only been there for a little bit. They said, well, a funny thing about this store is it's haunted. There's a ghost here. And the cashier turns white and says, what does the ghost look like? I said, well, he looks like an old guy, and he's wearing sort of like 1930s clothes, like jeans and a jean jacket and a blue shirt and like a gray hat with a short brim, like a gray cowboy hat with a short brim. And she gets even whiter. She says, my son sees him when I bring him in, and her son's is autistic, and so he's like pretty. I don't know the nice, like the proper way to say it. He's just like he's pretty autistic. And every time he goes into the store, he has like an episode, and finally he has a hard time communicating. And his mom finally asked him, like, "What's wrong with what's it at the store that bothers you? What's kind of setting off this behavior, this response?" And he said, there's a man there in farmer's clothes, an old man, and his eyes are all black.
Oh.
Last time he's right behind. It's like,
man,
like, Ghost is just standing behind his mom's, like looking pissed off, and he's I don't know.
That was well told, and I'm gonna put ghosts higher up on my ranking of stuff that's scary now based on that, because that was a solid like 6 on the crinkly neck scale, which is I'm definitely gonna invent that.
When I was in there just buying like a can of paint or whatever, and I hadn't worked there in over 10 years, and then I was in there buying a can of paint, and like the mom turned white. She's just like just turned completely just pale white, like, oh my god. And then when she told me her story, I turned really pale, like, oh my god. It was mutually creepy to everyone in the room. It was great.
So, all right, I've
creepy.
asked other people who have seen things before, and now I'll ask you, Seth, what, if you're agnostic in spite of some very confusing old man related sightings, what do you think that was? I mean, you can ask people if they believe in ghosts, but ghosts can also mean different things to different people, because there's sort of, I was looking at the 14 times message boards, and they were divided between, general interest ghosts and like poltergeists and other sort of more energy like stuff. There's the humanoid. There's like the humanoid types. I'm sure some paranormal people have you know, made charts about this and stuff. But you know, there's like
Cyber and all that.
right, it all comes back to Ghostbusters. But there's like the humanoid types. There's poltergeist stuff, which I remember when I was little, learning that people thought that was like teenage girls like doing that somehow. There's like humanoid ghosts who can sort of do stuff, and there are ones that are sort of stuck in a loop that seem more like an impression, I guess. That maybe the type that show up at a certain time, supposedly, walk down the hall and then disappear.
I think the story I just told is almost like a psychic orb imprinted onto the area. And it wasn't like I didn't assign any sort of personhood or anything to this thing. It was just like the Aurora Borealis. It was just like a feature of nature. It was just some sort of thing that just got imprinted on the area, and it would replay like a Disneyland attraction, like old little robot type thing. And I believe I was like okay with that. And there's a file called the stone tape theory that somehow events can imprint themselves on the environment through the iron in the environment, sort of like a magnetic tape. But which doesn't kind of make a lot of sense, because if that's the case, then everything around you is kind of constantly recording, and then also like, what do you do to trigger the playback? So, I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, you could make up all sorts of explanations that it depends on the person going by and the seasons and the. I mean, I don't know.
My opinion about that changed when I talked to the lady at that store who didn't know about the ghost. It's like a thing that everyone, because they eventually ended up sealing off that door for security reasons, and so there was no opportunity to see the ghost anymore. Then everyone who worked there, it was easy to steal stuff. It's easy to run out. It was easy to steal stuff through that door. And then so they sealed off that door. They changed some of the store policies because the lumberyard structures were becoming unsafe. So people just weren't given opportunity to see the ghost anymore. It just that one person happened to remember it. There was, no one else saw that ghost anymore. And so my opinion changed when this lady who didn't know about the ghost had about it, the experience, and her son had seen the ghost like interacting with the environment in ways that weren't like in a set loop, and that kind of changed my opinion or my ideas about what could be going on with ghosts.
I mean, it would be hard.
The most convincing argument to me is kind of like the impression, like ghost in a loop type thing. I mean, as far as convincing arguments about ghosts go.
I mean, as usual, it comes down to people say they saw a lot of things, and Seth has a very solid story there, both from like in a narrative way, and also just like you've got multiple eyewitnesses. Obviously, it could all be a tall tale, but I don't think it is. A tall tale from someone, if not you. But I don't know, like everything can be dismissed by I have the red hair, I have to be Scully. The fact that like eyewitnesses are impressively terrible at things, and science has definitely delved into that, and people have gone to prison because eyewitnesses suck so much. But I don't know. Some weird stuff's happening, I think. And I always tend to believe people who are like, I don't know what that was, but I sure saw something. Those people always ring the most true to me on every issue.
My personal sort of default is, like, I mean, I'd be able to understand. I saw something. I sort of like the sort of general agnosticism. I'm open to many different interpretations, just because I can't explain it. It's really hard to explain to other means. So maybe there's just some weird fluke of consciousness that you can leave in, and really emotionally heightened deaths can leave an impression on an area. Maybe it is some sort of afterlife where you just can't. Maybe you have some unfinished business, or you have some weird connection that permits you from moving on to whatever the next thing is. I don't know. I'm open to a lot of different.
But I mean, if that, I mean, obviously, I'm not expecting you to have an actual answer to this question. But I mean, there's always little
Yeah,
If you
Zach,
don't,
I want answers.
tell me what it is, Zach. I need answers. Please.
I mean, like, why? Like, how come every person who goes to Antietam isn't like tripping over ghosts? You know, somewhere where there's like a really concentrated, like the most depressing areas you can think of. Like, why aren't they just like chock full of ghosts everywhere and impressions?
That's a question I have, because
I mean, maybe they are. I guess I can't
like
speak to them not being that way, but
there's a canyon literally right across the street from here that is called Indian Springs Canyon, and one of the reasons it's called Indian Springs is because it's supposedly haunted by these Indians that were killed by conquistadors there. That was 500 years ago. These ghosts are hanging around. People see them, but it's like, do you know how the history of America works? Ghosts,
yeah, every 5
all
feet,
the time, everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, it's just, what is it about some places and others? Because you do get these reports, these like crazy reports of ghosts from Civil War battlefields, where people will see like they think are reenactors, and so, man, those reenactors were amazing. And the Park Service will be like, you're a reenactor, you had the field to yourself, stuff like that. That's an actual case that was reported.
That's again, for narrative purposes, that's perfect.
Yeah.
When I went to Gettysburg, I was on the lookout for ghosts, because my friend that I was with was both a ghost and Civil War buff. So he ran the gamut, and he told me lots of great stories. And we went on a ghost tour. And I smelled a cigar, and I was like, oh, it's a ghost. And it was a dude with a cigar. Like, we were walking Pickett's Charge, and it was quite, it was pleasantly empty and stuff. And so I could imagine like how depressing that whole scene might have been. But the dude with the cigar was just a guy with a cigar. So
yeah,
times the guy with the cigar is just.
That's the joke, damn it! that was the attempt.
Well, the house I lived in, it was this old 100-year-old adobe house on the family farm, and all my mom's brothers and sisters, that was like the starter house. Everyone lived there when they first got out of college, got married. It was just sort of like the get on your feet house. It's a free place to live, kind of start off your life kind of house. We were the last family to live there, and we had bought it from one of our neighbors' family, and it hadn't been older than 100 years, because his family lived in it for a couple of generations before we bought it. He was one of our neighbors. He was a really old man when I was a small child. He was born in that house, and the custom then, he was a Mexican man. And the custom then was they would carve out a little niche in the adobe with like the mud brick these houses were made of, and they would, if a child was born in there, would put the umbilical cord in then and seal it back up in the wall with more plaster. And the haunting there was things would move. Like if you put a glass on the table and walked out of the kitchen table, walked out of the room and came back, it would be on the counter or be on top of the refrigerator. Stuff like that happened. Well, it was really kind of prankish.
Mm-hmm.
These things would happen, and also you would hear these making it hear crazy ghosts. And then you would hear these voices chattering in this really high-pitched, indecipherable language, and it was more than one of them, and you could hear them talk to each other. And because of the cadence and sort of like the rhythm and pitch of the noises, you could tell if they were just like having an idle conversation, if they were laughing and joking. They would have arguments with each other, and they would respond to voices. You could tell them to shut up, or you could laugh along with them, and they would respond. They would, if you yelled at them to shut up, they would start talking very quietly a little bit later, kind of build back up. And our neighbor said, "Oh, that's just our umbilical cords that are talking."
Oh.
I'm like, well, it's not really like, it's just weird. Like, what causes these hauntings? I mean, can it really be an umbilical cord? It's such a weird, like, what's the criteria?
Wow. That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before, that type of supposed spiritual something. That's just the umbilical cord. So, okay.
Everyone who lived in the house knew about the voices. I do remember going there once before they tore it down just to see it again. and I left a Coke can on the table. And I came back into the room. I was the only one there, and I came back in, and it moved across. Moved, and apparently that was pretty common too. Like
Huh. So we were discussing backstage, such as it is, the depressing concept that ghosts are more scary when you're little because OMG, it's a ghost. But when you're adult, you'd be like, oh, thank God, the existential burden of living isn't quite as
right.
Unless it scares you more, to think of yourself
yeah.
imprinted. Like I'm
probably
down the hallway, walking down every night at 12:07. I mean that's not exactly soothing either, but it definitely.
When you're adult, you're a little more concerned about mortality, and ghosts aren't quite as terrifying. I think that, like if a ghost, I would love for one of my grandparents to show up as a ghost, and I could just hang out with them for a little bit. That would be great. I'd love it.
Yeah, I've definitely. My mom has definitely said that she'll do her best to try to haunt me, and I said that I appreciated that. If it she's fine right now.
If Grandpa just wants to walk across. If Grandpa just wants to walk across the living room every now and then, I'm okay with that. I would love that.
Yeah, and that's another cynical ass way of thinking. Well, obviously it's not. It's just that life is a difficult burden, and we all wish our relatives were there. But nobody Seth didn't wish that an angry old man was in a lumber yard, right? I mean, there's no.
I don't know. That seems pretty Seth-like to me.
Yeah, it does. The fact that he was wearing 1930s workwear is another dead giveaway where it made me doubt myself because they have a Stetson open road hat. I have a 1930s jacket, but I have those now. That I have money and the ability to buy these things for myself. When I was 20, I could afford to buy a CD every 2 weeks.
Yeah. That I do feel slightly, my theory has slightly crumbled a little there, but you still have some good solid evidence. I really think, I mean, I don't know if I really was determined not to see anything scary when I was little, I think, and even now a little bit. Our house when I was little, it was not that old even. It's only built in the 30s. And it just has fun. It was built by Germans. And somehow there was a legend that there was some gold buried, and they probably did die in that house. So when I was little, that fact enough was enough to make me nervous. And my siblings, of course, tried to scare me occasionally. But it was, I mean, it's that house. I don't think there's anything there, and that's also what my mom said. And for reasons that I could not possibly prove in any satisfactory way, I usually follow my mom's lead on these matters. I'm all right, there are no ghosts here, Mom. I believe you.
Well, and I mean that's the thing. Houses of a certain age, for a long time, if you were born somewhere or you died somewhere, it was at home. So, weren't really a lot of hospitals and things like that. So I mean, so much of the stuff of life just happened there in the bedroom or the sitting room or whatever.
Actually, the house I'm at, this is also my house, or it's my house now. It's 110 years old, but it also, I mean, it doesn't feel I don't know. The attic, I guess, is a little bit creepy. If you turn there's some tearing wallpaper that I don't know how old it is and stuff, but it's not. I always assumed that if there was some vibe of paranormalness that I wouldn't be totally unnoticing, but maybe I would. Maybe I'm just not the type to pick it up.
You got to be receptive to these things, I think.
What was that?
You got to be.
What was that?
Oh, you got to be receptive to these things, right? That's the argument.
Yeah.
But I feel I'm slightly more now.
Even the ghosts, then you're just not. You got to let them in. Let in the ghosts.
I think part of the problem with any mysterious shit is that I can't sleep at night already. So if I ever see anything remotely mysterious, I'm never falling asleep again. It's a pragmatic objection to seeing ghosts or aliens. I think I would rather see a ghost though, and that comes back to the. sort of existential thing. But then aliens, aliens give you kind of agoraphobia. But no, aliens probably would give you less agoraphobia about the universe because there's, assuming it's humanoid aliens, there's something out there. This is getting too heavy on my.
Of the three of us, I'm most surprised that Zach isn't the one with the ghosts.
Why is that? Do you feel like he's the type?
Oh, I do have.
And Zach grew up in.
Creepy Mesilla.
Which is a pretty haunted old New Mexico town, very picturesque, but also assuredly very haunted.
Maybe all the good shit's in the Southwest. Ghosts and aliens.
It is. That's where all the ghosts are.
Tell us a tale, Zach. Actually, do you have any tales?
So I had, both of my ghostly encounters that I had when I was a kid, which I read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe and EC Comics, and was also in Mesilla, which was like, kind of all the buildings were old and rural, and there's a big creepy Catholic church and everything. So all the
right on.
Yeah, the Double Eagle, haunted restaurant, just like right on the town plaza. But I saw the ghost of my grandma at my grandpa's house.
Oh.
When I was trying to remember how old I was, but I must have, it was probably like 7 or 8, or maybe a little bit older. I don't know. I could have been in middle school. Who knows? But it kind of creeped me out, and I just like ran off. But that house always scared me, just because it was like an older house. And then my grandpa passed from 11 years old, so it was like this kind of like, I guess like, it was her house, so her death was always sort of like, or she was always like over, she's always there in some way, and she had a lot of history there. So it sort of makes sense that I would have seen it there. But it did kind of creep me out. And that house had a lot of, there were like, there was a narrow stairway upstairs, and there was like a really old formal dining room, and kind of rooms off to to weird corners and kind of dark hallways. So I was always
Sounds perfect.
I was always creeping around the house, just like afraid of what kind of spooky creature could be around the corner. But my more like a ghost story that I kind of remember more vividly, because that one was kind of, looking back, I can kind of doubt things about it, or just think, I was like, just a creeped out kid. But I lived in a house, sort of like in a rural area outside, or it was somewhere near Carlsbad, for a very short period of time. And it was I know it was before I saw Poltergeist, because but there were weird things, like the TV would come on at night, and the sound would be on, and it would be like static.
Oh no, static is.
And you're like, right. I'm sure like stuff in the night, and like lights would turn on and off, and other people in the house. But that house in general kind of creeped me out, and then
that would
it
do
ended
it.
up, it actually caught on fire while we were living in it and burned down.
Did you burn it down to cleanse the evil?
I did not,
Okay.
but like a couple more weeks in it, it might have been a possibility.
That's concerning.
But yeah, so it was like weird. That, looking back, that's kind of, it seems like poltergeist stuff, but then it could be, bad wiring.
Sure, yeah.
and people being up at night. So so looking back, and even in Mesilla still, last time I was there, it was, I rode my bike to see my dad. He lives in Mesilla. And there were parts of the street that were just like pitch black. Like you couldn't see in front of you unless you had a flashlight or something. And there's old pecan trees and old buildings, and it still creeps me out in a way that's not like, not like someone's gonna get me, but like something is just like watching, or there's something. They're not in a I'm gonna get mugged kind of way, but I'm in a you know, in a I'm gonna be haunted kind of way.
I mean,
but that's the one area, you know, I've kind of got that impression other places, but that's the one. Mesilla is the one place that always holds true to that, I think.
so creepy, but not like malevolent
The
necessarily. Just like that
Right, right.
something's out there, not that something's gonna get you, as you said.
Yeah, yeah,
there's a
exactly.
there's a restaurant on the that we kind of briefly mentioned, the Double Eagle. It's on the Mesilla Plaza, and they Victorian bar. It has these really, I mean, they look like we're the bad guy, like the bad guy cattle baron in the Western with like the farmer's land, put the railroad through or whatever.
Damn kettle
You know,
barons.
old Victorian furniture. But it's haunted. Everyone who works there sees like this ghost woman walk around. I can't remember what the story is, but there's also a chair there. If you sit in it, you have like just like terrifying nightmares for three nights in a row.
That seems that kind of thing seems too specific to me. Like 3 nights, precisely 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somehow, as soon as it gets
It's like a curse.
numerical, I don't know. Like time, sure. Again, my ghost appears at 12:07 in the hallway, but like 3 nights, I don't know. So suddenly,
And the
I
thing
begin to doubt.
interesting about Mesilla, just because it was, you know, it was a Mexican town that would then became an American town in the 1850s or whatever. They still do, they'll do muertos there, and so they'll go out and they have people that pass that year, dead relatives, and you leave little things, sort of things they liked in life, and things that, you know, like maybe like a beer or a cigarette, or maybe you put their favorite sweater, just sort of a little memorial. So it's in a way, it's sort of like, you know, visiting with the spirits of just having that day with them. Like, you know, we'll spend a little, you know, we'll remember you and kind of commune a little bit. But, you know, just right outside from where the terrified of.
Yeah, not to be a super white girl from the Northeast, but I mean, the Day of the Dead stuff, I'm sure would have scared me as a kid, and I'm sure it scares even little Mexican kids on occasion. But there's generally a good vibe there when you're making your little shrines for people who died the past year and hanging out with your relatives. One thing about hanging out with relatives, though, something about ghosts that doesn't quite work um, for me a lot of the time is this idea that they would, of all places, haunt a graveyard. Um, I mean, not like the place they died, maybe the place they lived, maybe, but the graveyard seems an odd choice. So, some ways, like, I mean, we all walked in graveyards when we were teens, I assume, on occasion, and we're slightly afraid, or some variation thereof. But a graveyard is probably like there's nobody there. Up at my grandma's cabin in Montana, in a national forest above up the road a bit, there is a 19th century graveyard where they put people who died of diphtheria because they had this idea that they had to, you know, have them isolated still even after they died. And there's some sad ones like Baby last name, who clearly didn't last long enough to get the proper christening and stuff. And there's some wooden ones where the names all rubbed away. And my cousins and I slept in that graveyard when we were up in Montana a couple of times, and like it's, you know, it's pretty pleasant up there. It's probably a pretty nice place to spend your eternal rest. But there is a secondhand story of that my aunt told me that a neighbor kid, 60s, I assume, in 1960s, dug up a bone from one Henry Percy Atkinson who's buried up there. You know, full name, respectable title, to be granted. He took a bone, and then apparently old Henry Percy Atkinson appeared beside him in the car sometime later, and the bone was promptly returned.
Oh wow!
I mean, again, that was my aunt telling me about the neighbor kid, and I'm not totally sure the origin of this tale, but it's so reasonable, I think, on the part of the deceased. That was my first reaction. It was like,
hey,
yeah.
Give me that. Give that back.
Yeah, what the hell, man?
It's the hauntings that make no sense. There's a lot of haunting stories, a lot of ghost stories. There's sort of like a transactional nature. Person did X to person, to this other person who did Y when they were a ghost. Like there's a linear progression. It's like so there's sort of a logic to the hauntings, and then there's just the stuff like just an umbilical cord in the wall, and now squeaky voices argue with my dad at night. Like it's just like stuff that just doesn't make any sense at all.
I mean, well, I'm not gonna say that makes perfect sense, but anything where the spirits or whatever are just sort of hanging out, and that's pretty, I mean, that's another sort of pleasant idea. Or even with Henry Percy Atkinson, like he's clearly not gonna bother you unless you violate his remains in a fairly horrifying fashion. So a certain rationality there. The really Hollywood, evil, angry, violent spirit thing, which you still hear, the aforementioned friend I went to Gettysburg with went to Edinburgh in Scotland, and there's all sorts of he went to some places where there's some very violent, angry ghosts supposedly, and I'm sure there are tales of that are as convincing as Seth's. I don't know. It just seems like a bummer that any dead entity would spend its time being furious and trying to terrify people. Gentle pranks and mischievous behavior is one thing, but the Hollywood shit seems excessive.
I mean, that might get boring after a while, though. You're
so you'd be mischievous people against the wall,
right?
making shit explode.
Yeah, I mean, after a couple centuries, you gotta up your game a little bit.
Reasonably terrifying.
I mean, to know you could, I suppose.
Did the ghost get Seth?
Yeah. The price for him having such good tales to tell is continued technical failings.
I warned him, that old man from the hardware store.
Yeah. I'm gonna think about that old man for a while now.
Yeah.
I had an old friend who saw some ghosts where he worked as well. I now closed down movie theater from the 20s. That's not a couple miles from here. And I went there a bunch of times when I was a teenager, and a couple years after it closed, I started to hear from this guy that he saw all sorts of ghosts there. And of course, he enhanced his credibility by saying he didn't believe in ghosts, but he saw lots of good stuff. But the thing is, he saw a bluish, translucent lady, and the only interesting thing about her as she walked down the hall was that the floor covered her ankles as if the floor had once been different. And that's pretty basic. He says he fled down to the pizza shop down the block, forgetting to lock up. And he also, he heard the laughter of children in the dark. He saw some guests who were not there. They were enjoying a movie. Turned out to not be there. And some classic, I definitely turned that light bulb off. Why is it on? It's always on. It's always turning on, sort of stuff. And
right.
I mean, nothing really threatening or scary. Just ghosts being there.
Yeah, just ghosts hanging out, walking around, watching movies.
I like the idea of ghosts in like a McMansion or something, because it's always like a place that's weighty with history, and just what if you're a ghost that just hangs out in chain restaurants and McMansions?
Right. That's kind of what I appreciated about the Paranormal Activity movie series. Is that it was like
see, I still think I'm too scared to watch them. Does that
I don't know. I didn't really find them super scary. They're kind of they're sort of like Blair Witch, but a bit more they tried to find an excuse to use like higher quality cameras, maybe, or
Right.
if that makes sense. But I mean, there were definitely creepy parts of it. But it was, I mean, it's sort of like Blair Witch. You have to invest yourself and kind of really get into it and kind of get psyched up. But I didn't really find them like super scary. But I did like you were saying, they're kind of in these sort of generic houses and that sort of thing. It's not like and the ghosts are sort of without I don't remember a whole lot, so I don't think I'm giving away too much, but the ghosts are kind of like following around these certain people, so it's not like the Amityville horror where you walk into this house that already has this haunted presence and this
So are they haunting the
this
people
past.
more than the house?
Yeah,
Which
um
is another
at least from what I
option for
remember.
haunting,
It's
I
been a while,
guess.
but yeah, and I like that idea because then it brings it can make a sort of an average generic setting a little more creepy
Yeah, and then there's
as
no
opposed to
escape,
just getting like a
presumably.
right
The ghost wants to follow
exactly.
you all over.
Yeah, and that probably does, for those movies, that probably makes it a little, atmosphere-wise, probably gives them some more challenges.
Yeah,
I
sometimes
definitely dig
found
the
footage
concept.
stuff can kind of work out. See, but
Yeah,
Blair Witch kind of only works once, as far as I'm concerned. Even if
Yeah.
you already know it's fictional
I'd
and you
agree.
watch it like 8 years later, but it still only works once.
I could never get through it the first time because it gave me motion sickness, and I
Oh
don't.
yeah,
Which is weird 'cause I don't usually like roller coasters and stuff like that. Don't bother me. I have no idea why that like one movie made me sick, but
I was fine with that.
I think you're
I
afraid of the truth.
Cloverfield made
yeah,
me
The Blair
dizzy when I
Witch was
watched it last year, and I was
yeah.
actually kind of
Cloverfield
surprised.
didn't bother me for some reason. I don't know
Yeah,
what it was about just Blair Witch. Just made me like.
yeah.
So put that on the
I think
same
by the
list
time
as
they did
Mothman
Cloverfield, yeah, and Cloverfield
movies
had
that
like sort of evened out the found footage setting. I think with Blair Witch, it was kind of like the I mean, like the first big thing. I guess there was some stuff in the '70s that was sort of similar, but I think they exaggerated like the shakiness a lot,
yeah.
and it was before there were a lot of like cameras that had a stabilization and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So Cloverfield is like similar but better quality, maybe.
I always like all the various excuses people have to keep holding the camera. And, sometimes they use it for a light or something in the scary situation. Like they need a flashlight or something. And eventually they do finally drop it on purpose or leave it behind or something. But there's
Right.
always sort of. But then
Yeah.
every time I think that that's ridiculous, I think of the 9/11 documentary by the French brothers who happened to be at some firehouses in New York at the time. And if you sort of assume, all right, these people are making a documentary, and like just whatever it was, it happened once in life, even if it wasn't about ghosts or aliens. So.
Right.
Zapruder is like, hey, the president's driving by. I'll just take a nice home movie.
Nothing, just a
Yeah.
nice, fun
Back
day.
into the lab.
Oh, back into
Back
the
into
kind
the
of
lab.
yeah, and it almost makes sense in like if there's someone who has sort of like feels like they have like a journalistic duty or something, or like they're making a movie, they're kind of like in that mindset. Like I think when the
Yeah,
average person does it, like especially in things like Cloverfield, it's kind of a little more. It's like a little bit harder to buy into it.
because they're
Like
a random person. Yeah. But then, like, journalists who are determined to film the horrible event are often punished by Hollywood, which I take semi-personally. Endangering yourself for the story means you get stepped on by fake Godzilla or what have you.
yeah,
I do kind of like that conceit in those movies, like, well, heavy shit's popping off. Like, I have a duty to posterity to record everything. Like Cloverfield, like, well, there's a giant monster attacking the city. Of course I have to film it. This is for the future. This is for posterity. And like,
I feel
no,
like
you're
wouldn't you assume
yeah,
someone else was getting it, like the footage of
yeah.
the giant monster?
I'd be like, everybody has a camera out there. But
Yeah.
like,
it'll be on the
I also feel
it'll be on the rating anyway.
the found footage
Oh.
Oh,
Seth. It's like a found footage movie. You're breaking up.
They can only take video.
Yeah, has anyone
It's special anymore? It's just like a found footage movie out of the cloud or some event. Should probably be interesting. You could probably pull that off once, but
I'm not sure
I
how.
think the poor Seth. Just getting you, Seth. I was trying to think of the name of the movie, found footage movie. This is like way off topic, but with the like the superhero kids.
Oh, Chronicle was it?
Yes, Chronicle. That was yeah. That might be my favorite in that genre. I haven't seen it for a while, but I just remember.
I saw that.
You're gonna get away from my potential segue. I gotta go back and I gotta grab the segue.
Anyway, go
now
back.
The segue could go into Ghostbusters, which we were briefly discussing before we started filming and recording. But there's also the traditional. I think I believe the webcomic XKCD made a little chart about this at some point, where like the increase in smart camera phones and stuff, and like the footage of paranormal and other type things, and it's not. It's not encouraging for the people who think the truth is to some extent out there.
Especially
we were talking about filming, and
especially it's not super accurate. The whole UFO, people stopped seeing UFOs when everyone had a camera in their pocket.
Well, obviously, I mean, my Google Alerts, tells me otherwise, that there are people seeing stuff, but it continues to be so freaking ambiguous. No matter how good cameras get, and no matter how many people have one, at least in their pocket at any one time. Now you can always, with ghosts, you could say, well, they don't show up on camera. Though when I was little, we had this really scary book. Actually, this explains so much of my life. Not that I saw anything actually scary, but we had a little book full of like true alien sightings that was traumatizing and had these really scary drawings. And then there was a black and white book about ghosts with a photo of a ghost on the cover. And it was really scary. I can picture them both because they clearly made an effect. Yeah. I don't know. With ghosts, you could say that they don't show up or something. But you could also, ghosts and aliens could both be some interdimensional, like something. I mean, it's not necessarily that dead guy, angry old man beaten to death in lumberyard. I mean, maybe that was him. But even in terms of sightings, it doesn't always obviously translate to like human dies and then humanoid translucent form is there in that approximate area. Maybe there's something, I don't know, parallel universes and such flickering, like just Doctor Who mumbo jumbo. Like there's so much potential for what a ghost and an alien and even cryptids and of many kinds could be. That, like, how are we ever supposed to suss it out? Even Fox Mulder couldn't figure it out because Chris Carter's a bad writer. It's true. So it's all interdimensional, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I think so. I think that's the best explanation.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Uh-oh.
Seth continues to fail at the internet, but it's the ghosts. I mean, the Southwest. Yeah, Southwest is full of aliens.
It is. It is.
I've always heard that Mexico City has lots of alien sightings. I used to have a friend from Chile who had very weird stories. Very weird stories of little men that like stand on your chest at night and pinch your face and like just all sorts of good stuff.
That sounds really comical. I mean, it'd be horrifying if like it happened to me.
Yeah.
But
that's kind of a thing here. They call them duende.
What is that?
Seth. Oh man.
We started with such promise. I guess we could talk about how weird Dan Aykroyd is. Yeah, you know, Dan Aykroyd is the Fox Mulder of the real world. He's going to discover the truth about things. But I will say that I recently discovered why there's a ghost blowjob scene in Ghostbusters, which for all of us who saw that movie originally as children and then over the years and were very confused by that, Dan Aykroyd being sort of insane and believing that everything is real. And I don't know. I should probably watch like the 2-hour documentary that's just him smoking and talking about aliens that someone made.
Wait, is that a thing?
But basically, it's totally a thing.
He claims to have been investigated by the Men in Black.
Yes.
He says he saw.
I think we can get him on this show once we get up to snuff, and I think we need to invite him on.
I mean, I believe Dan Aykroyd over any of you people. I'm just saying.
Wow, that's tough but fair. But basically, Aykroyd, I think they filmed and like alluded to more of like a sexy ghost thing, like a succubus isn't quite right. I don't know if they're more like demon-like. Demons are a whole other topic. But like there was gonna be like a whole more like weird sexy ghost thing, and then all of that was removed except that one scene, and it continues to be like the most awkward thing about Ghostbusters.
I haven't seen that movie in many years, so I need to watch that again and be traumatized.
Just assumed that the producers were like, Dan, we have to cut the ghost blowjob scene out, and he pulled out like his file box of ghosts. He's like, I have 37 documented instances of sex with ghosts that really happened, and if you don't let me put this in the movie, I walk. Try getting Chevy Chase on this movie. We're already 3/4 of the filming. You can't replace me. It's insane. And they're like, okay, Dan, all right, calm down.
I just think if you're gonna have a ghost blowjob, you need more to it to explain why it's come to this. I just
Usher song
another
too, I think, where like club and has sex with a ghost on the dance floor of the club. That's like, is this a real problem, a real concern of yours, Usher? Like, you worry about?
That's a concern of all of us that live our best lives.
Ghosts do bring out, Ghosts do bring out our primal.
That's what he was.
So it only makes sense.
Yeah, that's what he was worrying about instead of herpes, and look what that got him.
I don't keep up on my Usher gossip, which now I regret, considering the first
I have one
piece
Usher
of
album,
information.
and I don't know if it's on that, but I'm actually.
I feel like there's some celebrity who either had sex with a ghost or an alien. I forget. Was it Kesha? I don't know.
Maybe.
There's a lot of. Sorry if I slandered you, Kesha. Yeah. But someone like, and I know Megan Fox believes in everything weird, and I was completely infuriated by. Esquire is usually like the best mediocre magazine that I can get for $5 like a year. But their cover stories on celebrities are heinous, and there's one on Megan Fox, who's not a very interesting person. But there were all these quotes where she kept alluding to all of the loony stuff she believed in, and the author, used a bunch of ellipses and basically kept talking about how symmetrical her face was instead of like why she believes in Loch Ness Monster. It was the most infuriating article. It's like, no, we can look at her face whenever we want to Google. Like, let's talk about her belief in the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah, I want to know more about that.
Disappointing journalism.
You got to ask the.
Maybe that's a prolonged exposure to. Maybe there's a prolonged exposure to Michael Bay does to you, because I mean, Shia LaBeouf.
Ooh.
Megan Fox believes all this stuff now. I mean, maybe just.
And Mark Wahlberg was already insane, and so was Nicolas Cage. Yeah, there's definitely something. We should make up a conspiracy.
There's our next episode.
Yeah,
the
Michael Bay.
Syndrome.
Yeah, it's real. It's serious.
Let's
tell
it.
I have not been up on my Michael Bay movies, thankfully. But I also have not been listening to enough country music lately, possibly because I'm very stationary and I do my work in this room next to the air conditioning and I type. And sometimes that's okay, but it's the summertime and I wish I was on like an epic journey to visit Roswell and the ghost of Johnny Cash and wherever it may be and things like that. So I haven't been into country music a lot, and I would love to do a show where we talk like full on about murder ballads, and sometimes murder ballads have a component of ghostly revenge. When we first started talking about ghostly themes and ghostly songs, somebody immediately mentioned Long Black Veil, which a bunch of people have done, but I associate with Johnny Cash, where the ghost is just telling the tale and observing the ritual of the woman coming to his grave, and because he got himself killed for really silly gentlemanly reasons. But there's a lot of ghostly songs. Once I thought of it, I got Ghost of Virginia by Justin Townes Earl stuck in my head, which is just like a classic "There's a ghost train over there, y'all" song, but it's not bad. What did you guys have some favorite ghostly songs that you at least wanted to spread the joy of?
Long Black Veil is one that sends like shivers down my spine, and I don't know. I was listening to. I never really thought about it as one, and I guess it's not really in the country genre, but it's Blind Lemon Jefferson song. See that my grave is kept clean.
Oh yeah, sure.
It was like covered by Dame Van Ronk and a bunch of other people, but I never really thought about it. Like I thought of it as like I'm gonna be a ghost type song, but then I was listening to it and there's that line. I think, and my heart stopped beating and my hands turned cold. And I believe what the Bible told. And I'm like, hey, this guy is totally dead.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it before, but in anticipation of this episode, I'm like, yeah, he's totally dead. Then he's like, clean off my grave, buddy.
Will do.
Yeah, so that's another one. I like that one because it's, as far as ghosts and, the demands that ghosts often make in popular culture of people.
Yeah,
I think it's.
I want the title something that really badly now. The demands.
Yeah. The demands of ghosts. It's like, they always want, your baby or your, or your soul or something.
Yeah.
And this ghost is like, hey, just clean the dirt off my grave, buddy.
Just dust things off.
So, yeah. But that one, and then, and the other one I was thinking about too, which isn't really. It's another one that's not really like a ghost scene, but El Paso by Marty Robbins. I was thinking like songs like that. I was thinking like it's like sort of like borderline where he's like narrating the whole song, but then at the end of the song he's dead.
And there's definitely more songs.
Wait, how are you telling the story?
Yeah. Twist.
Yeah. Sequel to El Paso from the girl's point of view called Felina from the girl from El Paso, and then there's a third one that's about like a businessman. Talking about the gunfighting legends of El Paso, and he's flying over the city. He's like, this all looks so familiar to me. I wonder if in a past life.
Oh.
So it all went on and on. I didn't realize there were sequels.
So there's a trilogy. El Paso City being the last one.
Well, wait, did Marty Robbins do all this? Wow, I don't know if I ever.
El Paso City kind of has like the nicer. But it's the goofiest of the three stories. The Felina girl from El Paso song is kind of the most depressing because she was like just a poor Mexican girl in Santa Fe. They got sold into a life of sin.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Kind of like House of the Rising Sun style.
Oh yeah. I kind of don't like the House of the Rising Sun. On a side note, maybe because everyone who can slightly play the guitar bravely attempts it.
Yeah.
It's my wagon wheel because I'm a wagon wheel defender, at least to a point.
It is kind of like, it's one of those funny ones too because everybody plays with that chord, and then but everybody stole it from like someone else, but I don't know. I've heard a couple older recordings of it, and I kind of like it. Like it didn't always have that same melody. I guess.
Plus, when dudes sing it, it stops being about being a woman of ill repute and just like that house is real bad, y'all. Damn that house.
I spent way. That house has unreasonably priced sex.
I judge Virginia that song
much
solely
money
on the pronoun used in it. Yeah. it's been the run of many poor, like, if they say boy instead of girl, then I'm just like, no, I'm out. I
I
can't take you
love
seriously.
people who will not switch the gender in a song.
Yes.
I feel like it's such a. I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions, but it always feels like a cop out. So it's like, you guys have to know I'm not really a girl singing about a boy. Ew. So I have to switch the.
I'm a dude. I'm a guy.
For some reason, the
Yeah.
Carter family, like AP Carter, barely sang, at least compared to his wife and her cousin. But like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of Carter family songs that are like totally just only ladies singing, but they're talking about like that aggravating beauty. Lula Walls is the first one that comes to my mind, and like there's like you ladies sing about ladies. You can't do that. It's the 1920s. What are you doing?
Well, there's that.
Well,
obviously,
that's why I
Blue.
loved Single Girl, Married Girl.
Oh yeah, totally, yeah.
Such a revolutionary song.
I love the Carter family.
Yeah.
Well, there's that whole genre of like popular ballad that came up from England that kind of informed so much of our folk tradition about ghosts who task a living person to perform something for them so that they can lie at rest, and it was called the Grateful Dead.
Wait, really? I did not know that.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Prior to that,
Wow.
The band was the Warlocks, and then they changed it to the Grateful Dead.
That's way worse and nerdy and sounds bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then there were in the like, remember, like around like the 2000s, there was that garage rock revival. There was a garage rock band called the Warlocks.
So it's all coming back.
Like, well, the Grateful Dead's
full circle.
More so. Sorry, now.
And then the Warlocks changed their name to the Grateful Dead. It just keeps going.
Oh my god! I didn't know.
Happened, and it will happen again. Wait, what?
Even if Grateful Dead was not like a thing, like that's a decent band name. But I'm pleased to know that because I didn't know. I feel like a lot. I've been desperate trying to think of. I love murder ballads, but most of them I think they stay dead. Which is kind of a drag because my favorite ones are invariably based at least slightly on like some actual crime, some 19th century crime usually.
If they didn't stay dead, then there'd be no lesson to learn. They'd be like, well, you still got to come back with a ghost, even though you went off with the boy you weren't supposed to, or whatever,
etc. Other things.
And
there's always if you want to get scarier than ghosts, there's always Oh Death, which my favorite thing about it, besides everything, is that apparently the origin is unknown. It's like it's not.
God, that's terrifying.
So basically, fucking Death wrote that song. Is my headcanon, as they say, because like, I honestly like I could have thought maybe that was just like a really kick-ass modern song, and they thought, oh, Ralph Stanley, bless him, has the most scary, awesome voice ever, so we'll make this happen. No, it's like an old-ass Appalachian dirge, and fucking nobody knows who wrote it, so Death wrote it, and it's great.
Death wrote
it, yeah. That's one of those songs that I save it up because it has a palpable like effect, so you can't waste it. Plus, it's
listen to it on the.
One time, my friend was doing his college radio thing, and he was going to come to our mutual friend's birthday party later. But before he did, he played "Oh Death" just to get that party started because he knew that we were all listening. So it's like, yeah, time to
party.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's sort of a mini genre in country music of people who meet the ghost of Hank Williams.
Yeah.
Songs. But the two that immediately come to mind are "The Ride" by David Allan Coe, where he's like a hitchhiker who's given a ride in this old car to Nashville, and it turns out that Hank Williams gave me that ride, even though Hank Williams was not driving when he died. He passed out in the back seat.
Right, because otherwise worse things might have happened.
Because Hank Williams was like, I could die or I could go to Ohio, and in the two of these things, dying is clearly better than Ohio.
I second that.
There's a
Ohio sucks.
It does. It is God's yardstick. It is just.
Pennsylvania is very mean to West Virginia, but it's so much better than Ohio. Ohio sucks. Sorry.
Yeah, Michigan hates Ohio too, which is funny to me. Like,
do they know they're Michigan? I mean, we're just gonna start trashing all the states. We'll get hate mail. It'll be great.
And then there's
I have to
another
be
one.
very careful about that.
There's
That's
another
true,
Midnight
right.
Montgomery by Alan Jackson. And cool.
Are you referencing
So it
Alan
has like
Jackson? I don't know if we're allowed to do that on this show.
It's one of his
He has
better
his
songs,
moments.
and it has a it has one of his. It's a very spooky, ghostly sounding song about meeting Hank Williams' ghost in the back of the tour bus. I think Midnight Montgomery. That was pretty good. And there's a couple of there's also a genre that's sort of like ghostly murder ballad that gets kind of ported over to the cowboy, like Ghost Riders in the Sky, which is I forgot to grab the book before we did this, but I've got the information who wrote it, like in a Glenn Orland book around here. The cowboy that sees the ghost right across the sky, and the cowboys tell him, like, you better straighten up or you'll be stuck up here herding the devil's cattle for eternity with us, which actually
that's a pretty metal way to
badass.
spend eternity, on the other hand.
Yeah.
I mean,
I want to be a cool ass. Like
I'm not saying it's
Sign me up.
Yeah.
And there's one that's kind of my personal favorite called "Murder Steer," and it's a folk song. It's
also metal.
Based on an actual historical event that really happened in Brewster County, Texas, which is about west of here, where they were splitting up. Back then, people used to let their cattle run free everywhere. There weren't fences. A couple times a year, and people would sort out, well, these cattle have my brand, and those are their cattle. Those cattle belong to that cow, and they kind of sorted out. And these cowboy outfits get both are claiming the same steer, and their two representatives figured out, and they want, there's like a cowboy code about this. Well, one guy's just arrogant and mean, so he kills the other guy over the steer, being superstitious sorts. Brand murder on the side of the steer and say no one should have it, and then brand the date on the other side.
Oh man!
And so people have ghostly sightings of this murder steer roaming around for eternity. And the reason this song is my favorite is because I actually heard it for the first time sang by a cowboy around a campfire in Brewster County, Texas.
Nice.
Summer camp. And it was, that sold me. That song is awesome, and it will forever be great. Like,
that's good. That's good. Yeah, there's a lot. It just occurred to me that we could do almost a whole show or segment at some point about ghostly transportation. Like if we're talking about ghost songs, there's a lot of ghost trains and ghost ships and sort of slightly less literal, as it were, like ghost cars and ghost motorcycles.
Weird thing is now inanimate objects have ghosts sometimes. Like, where's the line? What's the like? Who's just the horns up and what button? It's so great.
Everything is alive, man.
Well, I mean, like if you think about in terms like purely of folk, not literally just folk, but like music stuff. Like when you think about all the songs about disasters that were made over the past 200 years or thereabouts, you have shipwreck songs and train wreck songs. Poor who lost his head usually?
Not Tom Dooley, but
no, Tom Dooley. Oh my God, I had a friend. He moved to Asia, but he swears that he has seen Tom Dooley's hanging tree. Poor Tom Dooley. But
oh my goodness,
somebody lost their head in the driver's wheel. Oh, there's so many train wreck stuff, and there was
Casey Jones.
Yeah, I believe it was. I don't know the origin of Casey Jones. I gotta check on that.
He's like boiled. He's like boiled alive by steam.
Yeah, there's like a really gruesome train wreck song. And they did. I mean, there are a couple of car ones, but and motorcycle. I mean, we all know what happened to Leader of the Pack. But once you get to planes, there's not a lot.
Amazing.
1952, Vincent Black Lightning.
Oh, sorry. I was excited when I thought about that song. That is a very good song.
It's not really a ghost.
But it's
not really a ghost. It's just sort of omniscient narrator. But
yeah, I just love
angels. It has biker angels come pick
it does to carry him home. That's right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
But plane wise, literally, it's like plane wreck at Los
Gatos.
Los Gatos, yeah, or
they recently
Not Good American Pie, which obviously is sort of vaguely
there
about
was something in the news recently about the deportees at Los Gatos, like they had found their graves or they were able to identify the bodies or something.
Yeah, I feel like my dad was like going on about
something.
Factual accuracy in that song. I was like, calm down, Dad.
There was something in the news about that recently, but I can't remember what it was now.
Yeah, I kind of, if I could find, like, someone's gonna listen to this and like steal my idea and make it better, but like I want to write something about the transportation songs thing, because there's a lot. And then we'll have Zach write the ballad of the Uber car.
Yeah.
It was actually a ghost.
The ghost Uber driver.
Yeah, there's a lot. See, this makes me like America in spite of so many other things about it. Just yeah, this is literally people ask me what makes me like America. I'll be like, oh, this podcast that we can't release consistently and have terrible technical problems.
Hey, my favorite thing about America is we have the freedom to release a podcast whenever we goddamn feel like it.
Right, but yeah, that's true. That is a good thing about America.
Too. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that is good. I was gonna eat one and then I didn't, and that was sad. I went to the gym instead, which does not make me love America at all.
It's pretty American though, going to the gym.
Yeah. I don't want to think about gyms. I want to think about ghost cowboys and murder brands and what have you. There's a lot to discuss in the months and weeks to come on this fun show. So we start off with ghosts, and ghostly shit there's a lot to cover. And we'll probably circle around to it again at some point, as well as aliens.
I feel like these are all
we missed some alien songs.
I feel like these are all starting points. Eventually, as we end up going to like paranormal ghost tours and paranormal conventions and stuff, like as we ease into this life of weirdness, we will circle back to these things and become so knowledgeable that we will be unrecognizable to our former selves. Like
that's a beautiful. That fills me with such hope.
I used to be a novice.
Do you not remember what it was like before you'd had yours? Had where you saw ghosts and had so much susto it turned your hair gray prematurely. Susto in Pennsylvania.
I don't think so. Sorry Pennsylvania is rectangular. It doesn't have a lot going for it. It's just, I don't know.
Just geometry.
Yeah, that's all we got. I got a C in geometry in college, no less. I'm really sharing with you.
I had to take it twice.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, with ghosts, and there's a long list of potential future topics. The particularly loosely defined next time topic was conspiracy theories. Again, a little too big and broad. Maybe we should dial it down to ones we make up on the spot. Yeah, good old JFK. There's a lot, or let's pick a couple of conspiracy theories. 2 or 3, maybe one or two of the really big ones, and then maybe some smaller ones. So we'll get And if there are any conspiracy songs, that's our next hunt. To find that. I'm sure there's something out there. I'm gonna wrap up, I think, this here podcast, because the ghosts are telling me to, and I do what they say generally. But
it's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little more pro ghost after hearing Seth's story more than anything. The old man in the yard, also the umbilical cords in the walls. Yeah, I'm gonna be thinking about that tonight. So that's the highest compliment that I can get. All right. I hope anyone who's watching and listening enjoyed our little chat as much as we did, or even half as much as we did, because this is fun for us. And catch the Lonesome Road next time, whenever the hell that is. Bye, Seth and Zach.